Well, welcome to Christ and Culture. This is Pastor Jeff Short with you today for another analysis video. Today we're talking about Halloween. And from my perspective, from my biblical Christian perspective, I consider Halloween one of the worst holidays. That's right, one of the worst holidays. And that may shock a lot of people because here in the United States, this holiday has become huge. I think it's only second to Christmas in total dollars spent on celebrating it. There's no way that Halloween warrants spending all that kind of money and spending all that kind of attention and energy and preoccupation and obsession with such a holiday because it doesn't merit all of the attention we give it to it. And this has only happened in the last 2 or 3 decades because I remember as a kid, Halloween was on the calendar and there were activities involved with Halloween, mild compared to what it is today. We used to go down to the fire hall just a few miles away and they'd give kids rides on the fire trucks through town. There were bobbing for apples, there was candy, there was all kinds of fun and games for kids, but not the kind of lawn decorations and the kind of movies and the kinds of activities surrounding Halloween as we know it today. Halloween historically is a recognition of All Saints' Day, which was a traditional Roman Catholic, mainstream established church practice in Europe, where All Saints' Day was a recognition of all of the martyrs especially, but a lot of the Christians who have come before us in church history. And Hallow Eve, or All Hallows Eve, is All Saints' Day Eve. So Halloween was the day before All Saints' Day. And the way this has been taken over by pagan culture today, and basically going back to more ancient pagan roots of the Druids and some of the ancient people who practice all kinds of occultic and witchcraft and dark magic and all kinds of things. That's what it has become today, more of a symbol of the occult than anything. And this is not a healthy preoccupation. It's not a healthy preoccupation, especially for kids, but even for adults. This is something that is not something to be celebrated. It's maybe something to be looked upon as a historical factor. There were Druids. Yes, there were pagan cultures that believed that you had to appease the spirits. I think the practice of trick or treat, for example, is some kind of an homage to the ancient practice of in superstitious times where they thought spirits inhabited everything, or maybe once a year at this time that the spirits would be active. And so you had to dress up like a spirit and you had to dress up and imitate them. And so they wouldn't harm you or hurt you. But all this goes back way, way back in ancient times. But today, the fact that we actually celebrate this day and we actually make a big deal about it and we get kids involved in it, this is really something that not only messes with their mind and their psychology, I'm talking about kids, but it's also a spiritual thing too. And so we shouldn't be emphasizing Halloween. We should be building alternative events and happenings around this time to sort of help people detransition from this Halloween activity that we've built up. Now, there is one positive development that has come out of Halloween over the last couple of decades, and that is they used to have a thing in the 60s and 70s and 80s called Devil's Night, which actually took Halloween another step further in the dark direction, which is they used to have young people, kids, mostly males, would vandalize and burn homes and actually wreak havoc on a society and destruction in the community, especially around Detroit, Michigan. I remember that. And that got to the points that was so bad. It was so much endangering people, and so much property damage was up in flames, where they had to actually clamp down on it. And pretty much that opposition to Devil's Night, so-called Devil's Night, has worked, and we don't have that kind of mayhem, chaos, burning, looting, and all kinds of mischief on that night before Halloween. So they've been able to eradicate that for the most part. But even Halloween itself, the way it's grown up and developed, is really an unhealthy development in society. It's an unhealthy custom. We talk about historical development. We talk about traditions and that kind of thing. Yes, it's possible for historical development and tradition to go in the wrong direction. It's possible for them to go in a dark direction, in a troubling direction, in a wrong direction. And that's what's taken place on Halloween. It's actually evolved into a worse kind of symbol than we want it to be. And so it's time, I believe it's time, that parents and community leaders, and especially Christian churches and leaders, need to scale this back. They need to cut this back. They need to prune this tree. It's getting unruly. It's like the hedges around bushes. You need to prune them back sometimes when they get unwielding. And so it's time for us to start to prune this so-called holiday away, actually. And it would be okay if Halloween were to go back to more of a harmless fun and game thing, or totally be gone in all of its aspects. So there's really nothing that is to be gained by perpetrating Halloween or even spreading it or adding to it. It's gone in a bad direction. We need to cut it back. Now, let me explain why that I am so against Halloween the way it's developed. Again, if it were just a harmless kids thing, kids put on costumes and run around the neighborhood a few blocks and got candy and came back, or went to some kind of party that was harmless and fun, good, clean fun, no problem. But because of the dark themes that have been developing over the years, and it seems like they're getting worse, it seems like people are exploring more and more of the darkness rather than just having fun and games, and it's become more of a symbol of darkness rather than some good, clean kid fun that all the family can participate in and be a fun family activity. No, it's become something more, and we need to be concerned about it. One of the themes that I've seen that has emerged from this ever-evolving Halloween celebration is the theme of death. So I want to show you some of these themes, and then I'll talk about them as I'm showing them to you. I want to bring up some pictures that I took just around my own neighborhood. And mind you, this was not going out of my way. I have a habit of praying and every day, and so I take time every day to spend some time praying. And one of the best ways that I can do that is to get out of the house and actually walk through the neighborhood on the sidewalk and take pictures of Halloween during the Halloween season to just show you that this has gotten out of hand. So let me bring up some of the pictures that I have taken. And here is a picture that I took of the front of a house. Now, you'll notice that in the front of the house, there are some things there that we can look at. And let me go over to the next photo and show you that this is a skull, and it's actually a tombstone. this death theme, and I think I can focus in on it. It says rest in pieces. So you've got a skull on a tombstone, and you've got a huge skull right there to emphasize that we now have Halloween that is made up of this death theme. It's really, really troubling to see death brought into the Halloween holiday. And this is for kids. Kids are part of this. It's not like it's something that, oh, well, that's just some group over there, the Earth Pagans or the Wiccans or something. They do that kind of thing. And that's their thing, and it's a freedom of religion in our country, so let them do their thing. It's off to the corner. Nobody really pays attention to it. The Wiccans do that, and we Christians do our thing and live. No, this is in front of kids. This is in front of everyone, and so we have to deal with that. Here's another picture that I took in my neighborhood, not going out of the way. It's just happened to be there as I walked by, and I said, I'm going to take that and illustrate my point about Halloween. And so what you have here are, you've got skulls again, and then lo and behold, what is in the corner there? We have the Grim Reaper, this menacing figure in literature with his scythe, where he kills people or reaps a harvest of death. And it's a skeleton clothed in, it could be rotting flesh or whatever, a cape or something like that. But again, this is out there for kids. This isn't just fun and games. This is pretty serious stuff. And the theme is death. And again, why do we have death as a theme in our holiday? It reminds me of somewhat the Mexican holiday. Unfortunate, again. I remind you that not all of these customs, not all of these traditions, or all of these historical developments are for the good. And I think we have an example there in Mexico and some of the Latin American countries, Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. And people dress up in skeletons and skulls, and it's really an ugly, gruesome thing to behold if you happen to be traveling in Mexico at that time or see pictures of the Day of the Dead celebrations. And associated with the graveyard, you go to the graveyard and you leave gifts by the grave. It's just a real morbid preoccupation with death. Do we really want our kids, do we really want children to be preoccupied with death and tombstones? Do we really want our children to, in a sense, be playing in the cemetery along the tombstones and make them at ease with all of the superstitions and all of the folklore surrounding graveyards? Do we really want them to be filling their heads with these dark themes? I don't think so. I think that makes for an unhealthy child psychology. And, call me crazy, but if you scare kids and terrorize them and feed dark themes into their minds, I think that's unhealthy. What about you? Don't you think glamorizing dark themes, tombstones, and skeletons is a bad thing? Now, here's another home and another front porch. And lo and behold, who do we have? We have a family of skeletons. And this is the kind of stuff I would imagine that kids would have nightmares over. Is that just me, or is that something that we should be concerned about? I think it's something we should be concerned about. Look at this. Do you want your kids to fill their heads with pictures of gruesome skeletons with horror on their face and ghoulish expressions? Is that what we want our kids to be thinking about? Or do we want to have them innocent with childhood and simply playing with harmless things? Yeah, we want them to be somewhat sheltered from the ideas of some of these dark themes that we're seeing. And so, yeah, I think it's harmful, it's dangerous, and we really shouldn't be promoting this stuff. I mean, come on. This is the kind of stuff that kids will input into their heads, and then they'll go to sleep and they can't stop thinking about it. I mean, you were a kid once. I was a kid. This kind of stuff is disturbing. This kind of stuff is not healthy, especially for kids, but also for everybody. Which raises another aspect of Halloween. There is this push also for the kind of movies, horror movies. And we saw this, and this isn't a new development. Unfortunately, this has been around for a few decades. Horror movie genre, where you try to scare people and terrorize people and psychologically attack people with fear and anxiety in the theater. They go specifically to experience that. And so you then walk out of the theater traumatized, and you've just paid, $10, $15 to go to the movie theater to be traumatized. That makes no sense at all. I think that you have to examine the mentality of someone who will actually shell out money. And nowadays, it's not inexpensive. It's very expensive to go to the movies. Shell out money to actually be traumatized, terrorized, and made anxious and afraid and scared out of your wits at the movie screen. I don't know about you, but I like to not be terrorized and made anxious and made to frightened. And I like to have peace and quiet and tranquility and nice thoughts, not terrorizing thoughts. And so in one sense, not only just the movies, but the whole holiday is somewhat of an assault on our mentality and our emotions with this kind of depiction of death and dark themes. Now, it used to be that there were aspects of Halloween that were pretty harmless. Here's a yard sign that I saw as I was walking by. It's, of course, The Great Pumpkin. And if you've ever watched that movie, The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, it's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. The theme is pretty harmless. It's exploring, Halloween. And this sign, I'm not sure where the people are coming from with this sign. It's a somewhat of a play on Jesus is coming, which is not real cool to insert some other figure in there rather than Jesus. But it's pretty harmless, I guess, with the Charlie Brown cartoons. I personally wouldn't put something like that in my front yard, but again, it's not terrorizing kids. And then here's another picture of something that, can't we all agree that this is not appropriate for kids? I mean, don't we have a shared humanity that would lead us to believe that, hey, this is not cool. This is not cool. It looks like some figure from a horror movie. It looks like some kind of terrorizing, evil, satanic doll that is going on some murder spree, like some of the movies depict, the horror movies. And this is something that no kid should really have to be subjected to. I feel sorry for kids that actually have parents that think this kind of depiction is cool, because they're the kind of parents that would let the kid watch all of the horror movies on TV. Now, we haven't really even talked about the whole dark occultic aspect of Halloween, and where you get symbols and all kinds of stuff of occult practices. You have witchcraft, you have wizardry, you have demons and spirits and ghosts, and that whole aspect. And I'm not going to say it's always a gateway into the occult, but it's certainly an introduction to the occult, and it's actually a positive introduction in the sense that kids are exposed to this kind of stuff, and it's supposed to be fun and games, and it's supposed to be a playful activity, but it's anything really but that. This kind of imagery that ushers kids into graveyards and the spirit world from a dark side is really harmful. And I think that parents need to step up and say, "No, we're not gonna expose our kids to this kind of stuff. We're not going to show them blood and gore." Some depictions around Halloween show dismemberment. I was shocked. I don't have pictures of the dismemberment theme or motive, but I think that in the past I've actually taken pictures of themes where they actually showed some gruesome parts, body parts. Yes, you see a person's body, some mannequin or something, and they've been cut up and their arms are thrown around the yard, and there's ketchup or red dye all over the members of their body, and their skull is laying on the. It's dismemberment theme, and that's part of Halloween. That's perfectly acceptable. People think, oh well, that's Halloween. We need to put up with that, but no, we really shouldn't. It's just stupid and foolish to expose kids, especially, but also adults. I mean, what good is there in exposing our whole society, desensitizing our whole society to violent acts of murder and mayhem and torture and all kinds of things? Now, another thing that you'll find around Halloween celebrations is these haunted houses. And again, similar to horror movies, slasher movies that involve sometimes dismemberment, chainsaw massacres where you have people cutting off limbs of humans, cutting off heads with chainsaws. It's just blood and gore and gooey, remains of bodies. And it's just there to terrorize and horrorize people who come into the theater or watch it on television. But another of these psychologically, I would say, damaging and unhealthy activities is the horror house, or the called fun house, or the fright house, where you pay money again, and some of these are quite elaborate in different cities and towns, but you'll find them out even sometimes in the country, in little towns, where the community has put together, or someone has put together, some organization has put together a horror house where you pay good money, I don't know, $5, $10, to basically enter into a nightmare where you walk down a hallway and showing decapitation, showing someone stabbed in the heart, where you are traumatized and terrorized and scared and anxious and shocked, and your emotions, these negative, dark, violent reactions and emotions are what the customer pays for. And again, this is pathological. This is sick, that you would actually have someone look forward to and pay money to be frightened and traumatized in this way. And you certainly wouldn't want to take your child to one of these things. I can't imagine parents getting in the car with the whole family, the kids and everyone, especially smaller children, and taking them to these fright houses, horror houses. haunted houses and exposing them to this kind of emotional and mental trauma. That's what it is. And so would these same parents wonder, well, why? I wonder why our kids are having nightmares. I wonder why they're terrorized. I wonder where they're frightened of everything. I wonder why they don't want to go out the door to school because of fear. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, it does make sense because you put them through that because you, as an adult, decided that you were going to participate in the glorification of Halloween instead of just saying, oh, well, we're just going to carve up a pumpkin and put it out by the front porch, and maybe we're going to buy some candy and we're going to give it out to the kids that come by in their costumes on Halloween. But we're not going to do much more than that because it's not really an important holiday, and we don't feel the themes are age appropriate. They could say that to their kids. But if you're exposing your kids to frightening horror movies and you're bringing them into these haunted houses and fright houses, and you're putting up in your yard and you're spending a lot of money and you're making these elaborate depictions of dark themes like we saw before, if you're spending money and you're a parent and you're doing this, you just need to look yourself in the mirror and say, what in the world are we doing? And why in the world would we put this stuff in front of our home? Look at this picture here. Why would any parent want to put a child, this looks like a small child, and I think in the movies, this is the kind of child that does terrorize and kill and does violence against other kids in the community? Or is this a child who's actually been assaulted and had violence against them? Why would you put that in front of your house? It's not a good, clean, wholesome, healthy theme. And the same way with that. Why would you put blood and depict some kind of a violent thing happening to a skeleton, what the remains of someone? Why would you do that? It doesn't make sense from a human perspective. As a civilization, we've gotten away from that kind of behavior. That's barbaric. That's the kind of primitive, savage kind of activity that we want to put behind us, I think. When we run across some savage tribe in, say, Papua New Guinea, and we find out that they are violent and they use sticks and clubs and dismember their enemy tribes and whatnot. We want to civilize and cultivate manners and humanity in those people, not encourage that. And so by glorifying Halloween like this, I think we're glorifying the lower base instincts of people, and we're also introducing kids and other people to these dark themes that we really need to be putting aside. This is not helpful. This is not progress. So Halloween is not making progress. It's actually taking us further away from the ideals that I think God Almighty clearly shows us in the Bible that we should be aiming for. And Christians really should not be participants in a lot of this stuff. We need to screen ourselves away from it, in fact. Well, I hope that's been a helpful commentary, something to think about. We'll see you back next week. God bless.